Well, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Mrozik, and I figure I'd do a quick video of the latest piece off the bench. So this is the latest one I did after the Samurai Wolverine, which was a monumental marathon of a build. I went from something very large and super complicated to something small and relatively simple. But this is a 3D print that I printed on the Frozen Mega AK for a client. This is of Cloud from the Final Fantasy VII Remake video game, which I've never played any of the Final Fantasy games, and I kind of think I should because I know they're really popular. This was sculpted by Daniel Ignacio. I'll put a link down below to where you can purchase this STL because he's got some really cool files. And this is a really great sculpt of Cloud. I'm not familiar with the character. I'm not familiar with the game, but this particular client is a huge fan of the game, and he reached out to me months ago. It's like, hey, can you print and paint this? And I said, sure. I told him what I think it would cost and kind of warned him that print and paints are fairly expensive, even for the little guys, because you have to pay for the print, which is not cheap, and then you have to pay for my services, which are not cheap, but they're not crazy expensive in my opinion. So the print alone, I can't remember what the print was. I think I charged them it may be around $200 for the print because you've got my, the digital file prep, the printing, the cost of resin, all this stuff. And then my paint fee. My paint fee was a little over 40 hours. It took me about 43 hours to get this guy's built-in paint. You're like, why does it take so long for something so small? Well, sometimes the smaller things actually take longer than the big things because the details are smaller and they're harder to get to. And you're in there just really... It's like when I was doing the detail painting on the Wolverine Samurai, it's like all that little hand painting and stuff. It's time consuming. It just takes time. So I'm going to go over this piece real quick because it's really nice. It's 1/6 scale. Again, I'm not going to speak to the character or anything, but from all the visuals and all the references, it looked like the sculpt is spot on to what the character looks like in the video game. Depending on the screen grab or the artwork you look at, there are slight differences in the colors of his costume. So the one I went with the one my client sent me, and I think overall it's the most generally similar to all the other references. So in some references he looks like he's all in black. Other looks like he's got black and a blue top. So I kind of went with the one my client gave me where he's wearing black pants and the top has a little blue tint to it. And I'll explain some of my painting processes on this. But yeah, this was actually a really fun project, especially coming off the Wolverine Samurai, man. This was just a fun project. It was very relaxing. I didn't stress out about it. I had a really clear plan in my head on what to do and how to get there. So those are just really fun builds. So everything on this piece was printed hollow with the exception of the sword. So the sword was printed solid and actually had some pretty decent print lines on this part of the blade for some reason. They didn't carry over to the bevel, but they were on this part, and I don't know why, because I didn't have it anywhere else on the print on him, and I printed it all on one build plate of the Frozen Mega AK. So there's something going on here. So I contemplated reprinting the blade, but I was actually able to sand them out, and they're gone. So I was glad to be able to save that print because it's a long print. I even contemplated doing it like on the Saturn II, but then I have to angle it. I mean, because this right here, this length is just, it barely fits on the Mega AK, and it doesn't fit on the other printers unless you really tilt it up. So yeah, so the only really bad print artifacts I had were on this blade. Now the worst, obviously the usual support marks you have to remove, a couple few little print lines, but for the most part, it printed really, really clean. I had a few little print lines I had to get rid of on the base. Again, large flat surfaces are where you're going to see print lines the most. I had no print lines in the clothing, the hands, the head. The hair was probably one of the hardest things to clean up because the hair's in two pieces. There's a back piece and this front piece. And I'm going to zoom in here a second, but I had to support this hair upside down to cause the least amount of damage and have the best possibly of a successful print. So cleaning up the supports in this part of the hair and then going back in and kind of resculpting some of the hair to where I had to sand out the supports was probably the hardest cleanup. and then getting rid of the print artifacts in the blade. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, when you have a print that's maybe not 100%, is it better to reprint, or is it better to try to save that print? And I try to save the print because a lot of times it's less expensive for me to spend another 30 minutes sanding or whatever than reprinting and charging for another print. So you kind of have to weigh those options. But let's go over this figure and the painting I did. So the base, I don't know what the base is from, like part of the video game. Like, I don't know. So, and there were two actually base options. One, this one, and there's another one, he's like on a rocky base with some crystals coming up. And my client's like, well, if you can print this one, do this one. So we went with this one. I like this one better. It's got more detail. The crystal one's kind of simple. But I just like this was mechanical. It's got a kind of architecture and some different textures and things going on. So after I got all the supports removed and everything, and got everything fitting really well. And by the way, this 3D file fits very well. I did have to sand out the opening in his hand a little bit because the blade would not go, the handle would not go in even before paint. I knew after paint it definitely wouldn't fit. So I did have to make the hole in his hand larger so it would hold the blade. Now it fits no problem. For my client to get this out, just pull up the weight and then just slide it out, because the way this is supported is basically his thumb is holding it in place. So after I got all cleaned up, then I made sure everything fit together really well, and it really did fit very well. The first thing I did is I used some casting resin, and I just used this stuff. This was recommended to me by a buddy, Lewis, who's a very active paint and repair guy. He recommended this stuff. It's SRC, polyurethane casting resin. It's like the cheapest stuff I could find that does what I needed to do, but even that is expensive. A gallon kit of that is about $90. But that's actually gone quite a ways. So what I did is I filled the bases solid, I filled the feet solid, and I filled the legs solid. So from the waist down, it is solid. And I did that for two reasons. First of all, I knew this blade was really heavy, and I didn't want the possibility of him toppling over from the weight of the blade. And I wanted to add magnets to the feet and the base. So I'm going to take this out real quick, because he is all one piece. I'm going to put some gloves on here because I literally just got done taking pictures of this and finishing this guy like an hour ago, and I don't want to get stuff on him. The studio pictures look really good. I just posted those on Facebook. I'll put them at the end of the slideshow. But let me show you kind of this goes together. So if I take him out, there are magnets in the bottom of his feet, right there, and there's magnets in the base. Let me put him to the side on something. I'll put him over here. My bench is okay. There's nothing there. I can put him down. And then I also put a magnet in the back wall. Now the back wall isn't solid. I left this hollow, but there's a magnet here and a magnet in the bottom of the base. So for the paint, I just kind of went with this weathered mechanical look. I started out with metallic, and I did some washes and some dry brushing, and then more washes and airbrushing, and I just kind of went for this kind of dirty mechanical look. It looks really good. And then for the back wall, this part actually almost took the longest. The part that took the longest to paint was this logo right here. That was over I painted this over a 2-day period, actually 2.5-day period, mainly because there's a lot of masking. But I love this part of the base. We got this, because we got all these cool textures. We got the mechanical metallic part. We got this kind of concrete wall with some exposed brick and these pipes coming out and stuff. So for this part, I did the exact same I did on the base. Same color, same treatment, so it would kind of match. And then for the bricks, what I did is I painted them a brick red, a dark brick red. Then I did some dry brushing. They all started out the exact same color. And then what I did to get the different colors, I just went in there with different color washes. So I went in with like a yellow wash, a brown wash. I even did like a blue wash and a rust wash, just on picking out individual bricks to give them. And I just real lightly put these washes on. And once they dry, they give you just a subtle difference in color. So each brick is a different color, just to break it up a little bit. And then for the brick, or for the concrete, I started out just speckling on different shades of grays, whites, and blacks. Did a little bit of dry brushing to bring out the detail. Then I went in and I airbrushed some more washes on to kind of give it some dirty, dirty look. A little bit of highlights on the edges here and there, not too much. And then hand painted the Final Fantasy VII Remake logo. This is actually a metallic black, but it's not really showing up that it's a metallic color. And this logo. So I started on this logo on, what's today, Sunday, on Friday. So the first thing I did is I painted the center red because it's got this kind of fade. So I painted this bright red first. I had to let that dry overnight. Then I masked that off. And then I painted the dark red square, let that dry overnight. Then this morning, I masked off the white, sprayed white. I thought about hand painting that, but I was like, no, it's white. I need to have really even coverage. Then I painted the white, masked it off, painted that. And then I sealed it and let that dry for a few hours. Then I went in and hand painted all the lettering and the yellow line and all that stuff. So that took quite a while just to get that done. On Cloud, I did some black leather for the boots. There's a little bit of weathering on here just based on the reference. There's some like dust effects here. The wrapping around his boots, it was kind of a burgundy color in the reference, so I kind of went that direction. His pants are black, and there is some shading in there. It's really hard to see in camera or in photos, but in person, as you turn this in the light, you'll see the highlighting and the wrinkles and stuff. So black is a tricky color because it's really easy to make it look gray. So the trick is to get it just enough highlighting that when you're looking at it, like, oh, you're not aware that you're seeing the highlighting, but it's there. So it's black with some light gray highlighting. The shirt, I started off black and then I went in and did some blue highlighting. Again, it's very, very subtle. It's hard to see in photos and stuff, but in person you can see it. And the leather, I did my usual leather thing at base coat and brown, did some stippling, dry brushing, some washes here and there to get the leather effect. And then we went in and hand painted all these metallic details, dry brushing, weathering. That took a little while. And I actually kind of went in reverse. I did all the clothing before I did any of the skin. Typically I would do the skin, then mask that off and do the clothing, but I wanted to do the clothing first and then I masked off the skin. So that's a little tricky to kind of mask off that stuff, but the arms were separate, which made it a little easier. Like I said, the hair was in two parts, the back part and this front part. His portrait turned out really, really nice. It's hard to see because his eyes are basically hidden under his hair, but in the reference, they're kind of really bright bluish, greenish color. So went with those. Slight pink on the lips. He's got some black eyeliner and a waterline in there to bring out the details in the eyes. The hair sculpt was great on this guy. I love it. Went with the bleach blonde. Again, depending on the reference you look at, it's either almost white or blonde. So I kind of split the two. And he's got this shoulder armor, which is kind of cool. It's like a blue metallic with some rust effects and some metal effects. So that's the paint on Cloud. It's just a fun project to do. I haven't done a 1/6 scale project in a long time. It's been a while. And then the blade was pretty simple paint job. I base coated it and I did some sponging and stuff because the reference I was given, kind of has this hammered look. So I kind of did that effect. And then I masked it off and I went up like one or two levels of silver on the bevel. And depending on how you look at it, sometimes it looks the same color, but when you look at the shine of the light, right, boom, there, you can see the two different shades. So it's kind of a cool effect. It was non-intentional, but depending on the light, determines if you can see that two-tone in the blade. And the studio pictures I just took really show it off well. So it's like if you angle it right like that, like right into the light, you'll see the two different tones. It's a cool effect. I didn't mean for that to happen, but it just did. But yeah, that's a cool piece. I'm really happy with the results. My client loves it. He was really, this is a new client for me. I've never done anything for him. And he was great. He gave me the reference and I just did my thing, and he just responded to the photos like, man, this is exactly what I was looking for. So I'm super stoked. He likes it. And I think he said he's going to have me do something again in the future, but there you go. 1/6 Cloud from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, I'll put a link down in the description where you can buy this file. Look at Daniel's other files because he's got some cool stuff. And print one for yourself. I mean, someone replied to my one of my posts that they did this in quarter scale, which would be pretty cool. So it'd be this just 50% bigger. But yeah, great piece, fun project. And thanks for looking. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.